Okay, a nice evening to all. Today we have some kind of climax session because we are bringing it all together today. You will see the full extent of functionalities of the simulator controller suite, including the race center and team server, which you can use to run your team races while using the services of the assistants and the capabilities of strategy planning and execution and other stuff you will see in a few moments. Our session will have three parts. The first one is a walkthrough through the race center with data from some recorded sessions. The second part will show you how to configure and use the team server, the backend for the race center, and also how to manage your teams and set up everything for an upcoming race. And the last one will be a live demo running a short race against the AI together with the race center and some virtual pit stops and stuff like that. As always, if you have questions, please jump in. I like to answer your questions at the point where the topic arises, so it will be best to jump in there. Okay, so let's begin. The race center is an application which uses a client server backend, a server which is running in the background. We will see the details for the server in this second section of this session. The server can be run on your local PC for testing purposes. You can host it on any machine you are in control of, or you can host it also in the cloud using Azure services, for example, but we will all see this in a few minutes. First, we want to do a walkthrough through the race center and all its functionalities. To do this, I have several recorded sessions from one of my past races. We will load one here. We will start with the 9 hours of Paul Ricard. Okay, the race center is divided into two areas. The first one here is the upper area where you can browse all the data which is available from the currently running session. This data is updated live when you're doing your race. You will see this later on in the live demo. But because we now have loaded the data of a past session, everything is static, but you can still work with the data. The reports you will see here are partly known from the race reports tool. This is the race overview, your car report, driver stats, positions data. Let's take a look here at the positions data, lap times, pace report, and stuff like that. But you also have additional report capabilities which let you analyze the data from your current session, especially the telemetry data for your car. Tire temperatures, pressures, lap times, fuel consumption, and stuff like that. Let's take a look here at the pressures report. When chosen such a report, you can choose the axis to display. Here we have at the x-axis the laps of the race, and then three value series on the y-axis, the temperature, the average cold pressure, and the average hot pressure. So you can see the air temperature is decreasing while the pressures are more or less constant. And this is what you want to achieve in a race because tire pressures are very important for your performance. You can, by choosing the gear icon, the settings icon here, dive into the data, take a look at some specific labs, for example 40 to 55, and then you will get a more precise display of the data. You can choose different styles of graphical representation and so on. There's a lot of data available. You can take a look at this later on using the Race Center in the offline mode. But more or less, that is the data you want to have when preparing a pit stop for the next stint. In the lower area here, you will have the control center for your current race. The control center gives you the capability to plan your session. This is the typical stint plan. You will have, while you're running the race, a full overview of the of the current running stints. You will have a complete list of all laps. You will have the ability to work with your strategy. We will see this later on, how this can be helpful during a race. You can register before the race a couple of reference setups for your different drivers, because not all drivers will use the same tire pressures at given environmental conditions, air temperature and so on. And last but not least, here at this page, you are able to plan the pit stop and transfer all the data to the current driver to the car, so that the pit stop settings are kind of remote controlled. Above this tab view, you have several menus with several commands. We will go through them in a few minutes. Before we do this, a short hint: you can almost click on everything here. For example, if you want to get some more information about a given stint, you select it. You will be given a report for the stint with all the lap times, some telemetry data, which is important, the driver performance, the driver consistency, and so on. If you click on a specific lap, you will get a report of all the standings for this lap at the end of this lap, to be precise. The deltas to the important cars before and behind you. Some information about temperature, the current fuel level, and the hot pressures in this lap or during this lap, and the derived best or perfect cold pressures as derived by the artificial intelligence. You can click on a pit stop. You can click on a given setup, which allows you to edit the setup. And you can generate more reports here from the menus. For example, the summary for the strategy. Okay, we have no current strategy set for this race. We'll do this in a few moments. You can generate a report for all the setups. For example, if you want to send them via mail, all the reports can be printed using the right mouse context menu, or saved as PDF file, for example. There are pit stop summaries. You can create driver statistics at the end of the race with a different performance, or better to say, the performance comparison between the drivers, and so on and so on. Lots to play with, especially for a technical-oriented team manager, and also lots to play with during the race to yeah, adopt the strategy and so on. Any questions so far? Okay, not yet, so I will continue. Let's take a short look at all the menus. In the session menu, you can connect to the currently active backend. As we are at the moment looking at data at a session which has been stored on your local hard drive in a backup copy, you can reconnect to the active session using this command. You can clear all the data from the currently active session. You can load a stored session, save a session, and so on. This we have already seen. In the plan menu, you work with your stint plan. You can create a stint plan from a strategy. I will show you this in a few moments. You can clear the current plan. You can create a plan summary, which is also a kind of report if you want to share it with email, for example. And you can release the plan. That's the same as this one. If you have changed anything in the stint plan, and are fine with your changes or satisfied with your changes, you release it and it will be stored on the server and will be automatically updated in all currently running race centers. This is very important if you're running a team race. Most of your teammates and maybe also a dedicated race engineer will run an instance of the race center. And the data are shared among all of them. But if you're currently editing something, you have to release it or save it so that all the others can see your changes. This is also very important here for the pit stops or when you are working with strategy changes. Okay, in the strategy menu, you find everything to work with strategies generated by the strategy workbench. We already had a session for the strategy workbench and there is a recorded video for that. So we will not jump into the details. The interesting thing is that you can load a strategy created by the workbench. For example, here, the 9 hours for Paul Ricard. Okay, you will see here the strategy. And you can use this strategy during your race. But we all know shit happens. You have had an accident, must have a out of sync repair pit stop, and from this moment on, everything you planned is more or less obsolete. So you can run a strategy simulation using the tools here and this command here while you are in the race, and the system tries to adopt your strategy to the current situation. For example, it will shift all the pit stops, will completely recalculate the fuel requirements, and so on. Normally, you will use the session data to gather, for example, the lap time to tire wear coefficient. But if you are very early in the session, for example, in the first few laps, we all know the benefit of the turn 1 crashes, so to say. It will be helpful also to check the use telemetry database so that you will use all the data which you have in your telemetry database to create the new strategy. Keep current map means that you instruct the strategy simulation to keep the current engine map, although the simulation might show that running with another map might be better. And last but not least, this one is very funny, but uses a lot of computation time, so try it before you're doing it during a race. Analyze traffic means the system is running a so-called Monte Carlo simulation model, which tries to predict the traffic for the next laps and create a kind of overcut or undercut scenario. You can set the required parameters here. For example, the lap time variation will be varied for each car according to the consistency of the current driver. The simulation will take drivers' errors into account according to the car control of a given driver and so on. I will not go much more into the details yet. So there's a lot of documentation about the simulation capabilities here. So if you want to do this, take your time and take a read. So the last menu and the according tab will allow you to work with remote pit stop control. So if a pit stop is coming up, you have several possibilities. You can use the AI as you are using it in a single user race to create the pit stop plan and perform the pit stop preparation. But as I already mentioned, the tire pressures might not be correct because the AI does know nothing about the requirements for the next driver. So in a team race, it is better to plan and prepare the pit stop with human intelligence, so to say. But you can still use the recommendations from the AI as a starting point and adopt relevant or required changes manually. You can enter the values here totally under your own control, or you can use some tools here. For example, initialize from session means the race center will look into the current data, especially in the lab's history. And for example, here we know we are in lap 271, 16 liters of fuel left, and therefore a pit stop in 27.3 might be a good idea. The 27.4 will also be good, but a pit stop should be prepared as early as possible to check the data and so on. The amount of fuel will be calculated from the session requirements, and he will try to propose good tire pressures. When we take a look again at the data from the last lap, these are the tire pressures which has been derived by the AI as the optimal cold tire pressures. But as I said, there might be other requirements for other drivers. And therefore, it is possible that you can choose between different adjustment algorithms or methods if you don't want to do it on your own. And so that this is that the system is capable to adjust the pressures automatically, you have to have a correct stint plan. So we are planning another stint now. I must create a new entry here. Say, okay, the next stint driver is myself. We will have a tire change. We will refuel, let's say, 75 liters. And now, I hope everything is working. I will use the adjust to reference pressure method, and you see the system has chosen other tire pressures. This is because you will look here into the list. I have two reference pressures, and he will try to interpolate or extrapolate the reference pressures as best as possible according to the conditions. And as you can see here, it is a little bit colder than the current temperature. My reference pressures for 1515 is 26.8, 27.8. Let's take a look here. 26.7 and 27.7. Perfect. You can also use adjust pressures relative here. This is an interesting method because it will use the pressures proposed by the AI for the current driver. It will compute a delta to the reference pressure of the current driver, which might be like 0.5 psi up, and will apply this delta to my reference pressure. Sounds complex, and yes, it is, but it is useful, for example, if you are running in environmental conditions where you don't have a reference pressure for. For example, it has begun to rain, but it's not heavy rain or medium rain. It's something like a drizzle with dry spots on the track and so on. In this case, this method will be best. Okay, any questions so far? Not yet, so I'm doing fine, or you're all sleeping. Okay, so let's take a look at another session.
Oliver?
Yeah.
My big problem is, maybe I did it wrong, but I have not this part of system on my computer. Is it in the installation with the assistant, or is it an extra program?
You mean you do not have the Race Center app?
Yeah, what we see now is a simulator control system.
Okay, I will show you.
Not
Sorry,
okay.
I will show you. Okay, you have anywhere on your computer the installation folder of Simulator Controller, which is in my installation, it's on D, drive D, and it's named controller. Normally, if you have installed without changing any presets, it will be anywhere here under programs, simulator controller, and so on. Okay, and
Yeah.
you will find all the applications after the installation either in your Windows Start menu. There is a simulator controller entry with all the applications, unless you have unchecked the start menu shortcuts during installation. But then you will still can go to the binaries folder in your installation folder, and there you will find all applications. And for example, the Race Center is here. Okay?
Okay. Okay.
Okay, great.
I have a look later on, so I think it will be there.
Yeah, okay, we do a one-to-one for that. Okay, now we will take a look at the 6 hours of Hungaroring, because I want to show you here some other stuff. The release, which is coming this Friday, will give you additional information about your pit stops after you have done the pit stop. What you can find there is for the last driver a report about the tire wear and the state of the tire which has been swapped. So we swapped the tires in this pit stop. The tire set 3 used in the stint 3 has been dropped to the garage, and now the engineer takes a look and examines the tire, and here's the data. The data you see here will be different for each simulator. This is the data for ACC. It is very detailed using grain, blister, you know all that. For AMS2 or R Factor 2, you only have the tire wear. You don't have the treat depth and so on, but there is anything for each simulator. So worth to look at. But you will see the data after a pit stop, not during the running stint. Okay, and then the other thing I want to show you here is if you want to use the driver selection during the pit stop automation, which is now possible beginning with this Friday, you must have to manage the drivers which are connected in the current race. The functionality for this is available in Assetto Corsa Competizione and in R Factor 2. What do I mean by that? If you think of the Assetto Corsa Competizione pit stop MFD, you have the select driver choice where you can dial left and right and choose one of the drivers to run the next stint. The positions of the drivers in this list is the position in the entry list. The entry list, unfortunately, is not available using an API, so I have to create a small tool where you can administer your team setup for the given simulator. Quite easy. Go here, select team. You will be given a new small window. As a default, it will select all drivers, but if you have a team member missing, for example, you can move it from a list, and it will not be available as a selectable driver. Important is that all you see here on this side is identical to the entry list in your simulator. And then you can change positions. For example, now Uwe will be the starting driver, the first in the entry list, and I will be second. It is important that this is correct when you want to use automated driver switches. And now you can choose here a driver for the next stint if you want to plan a pit stop. We will see this live later on in the demo, but this is the information for now. Okay, that's another thing. The tire set. If you're running a simulator which is capable of selecting a specific tire set, which is, as far as I know, only ACC, you have two possibilities. The first one, you dial a specific tire set for the next pit stop, which then will instruct the race engineer to use exactly this tire set during the pit stop automation. The other option is you can choose 0 and let the simulation choose the best fitting tire set for the upcoming stint. This is the best to do when you are not running a race with restricted tire sets. But when you only have 9 tires for 8 stints, you might want to manage the tire set on your own because you have used one in practice, one in qualification, and so on. Okay, so let me think about it, but I think that's it. So now let's take a look at how to run the team server backend, because this is necessary when you want to use the race center. The team server is a part of my software. You will find it in the binary folder here in the subfolder team server. There are a lot of instructions in the documentation to set up a team server for your own usage if you want to host it by yourself. But it is also possible to become a patron of the simulator controller software and I will provide you with a managed team server which is running on Azure for your races. So it will be quite easy when you do this, but if you have enough knowledge of stuff like that, it will be also very easy to host and run your own team server. I have set up a team server for my own testing purposes by copying this directory here to my program directory, and this server is currently running. If you double click the teamserver.exe, you will get this window here. This is the team server backend. Nothing to see here, but you will see that the server is running. Before you start the team server on your local machine for the first time, it is worth to edit the settings.json. The default settings.json, we can take a look here in the distribution, will look like this. You will have several options here. The first one is the DB path, the path where to store the database. Local means it will store it in the directory where the team server is located itself, and it will be named teamserver.db. You can, if you only want to run a couple of tests, use the term memory here, which means the database is stored in memory. It will not be written to the hard disk, but using local is the safe option. The token lifetime, we will learn a lot about tokens later on, but token is this one here. It is like the login credentials to connect to the team server, to connect also to your race and so on. And the token lifetime means how long a token is valid after it has been created by your team manager. This lifetime is counted in seconds, and this value is exactly 1 week. If you want to run a team server for your own, and you are sure that it will not be hacked and it will not be open to the public, you can set the lifetime to some incredible high value, and you will never have to renew your token, as we will see later on. And then when the server is run for the first time, you have to create a couple of accounts so you can connect to the team server. The most important one is the administration account, and the default here is to create a lot of test accounts, which you don't want to have when you're running your own team servers. So therefore, we can now take a look at the settings.json, which I use on my team server. And double click was not the right thing to do. Now he's starting Visual Studio. I will open it with Notepad. Here we go. And as you can see here, it's much shorter. I only have the admin account active. So the next thing after you have started your team server for the first time is to start server administration. The server administration will allow you to connect you to the running server. Okay, because the server is running here on my local machine, it's localhost. And as we can see here, we have one active account. It's named admin. So easy. admin. We connect, and now we see all the accounts which are currently available on the Teams server. Not to be confused with these accounts. These are only for the first start of the Teams server, so that you have a proper initialization. What I've done, beside the admin account, I have created account Vivid with a lot of minutes available. Okay, let's take another account so you can see how to do this. You create a new one with plus, give it a name. Let's name it test. You create a password which must be used when you connect to this account for the first time. You can copy the password to the clipboard to send it, for example, via mail to the team manager who is responsible for this account. And you can enter in a mail address, not so important, and you can define how many minutes is available in this account. We will use an insane high number, so we will have enough minutes for the rest of our lifetime, but you can also choose a fixed number of minutes to renew each round, for example, once per month, or additional number of minutes to renew. This is interesting for the managed team server I'm running on Azure, because there I have a lot of guys who are using my service, and they get new minutes each month to use during their races. The jobs here is also only important when you are running a managed server. For example, when you want to renew the account quotas, for example, at the first of the month. Okay, that's for the server administration. Not important if you are using a server which is managed by someone like me. So let's take a look at the duties of the team manager. To do this, you will have to run simulator configuration. And there you will go to the team server tab. Where you can connect now to a server using the credentials which has you been given by the manager of the server, for example, by me. The credentials for the Vivid are already entered because I've saved them the last time I've been there. But now we want to use the test account. We use the test, copy the one-time password here, and click login. Oh, unknown account or password. Okay, right, because I haven't saved it. Retry. Okay, now we're in. The first thing to mention here is the token. The token is very important because this token is the thing you can hand out to anyone who has not the login credentials. For example, your teammates, which are simple team members during a race. You can hand out the token to a dedicated race engineer, which might use the race center without even connected to your simulator. You must not be part of the ACC session, for example, to use the race center. So this token is something to know of, and this token is valid for the lifetime which has been configured in the settings.json of the team server. Okay, now we are in. We want to change the one-time password. So we have something which can be better memorized. And as I'm have nothing to spare for security, I use tests here. The same as the account name. Okay. Now we have test as our login credentials. So now let's create a team. The first thing the system wants to know is the name of the team. And then we can enter a couple of drivers here. Oliver Ewig. Hormann. And so on. And you can create an unlimited list of sessions. For example, for an upcoming race. Or I recommend to have at least a test day session so that you don't overwrite your valuable data from your last race, but you can still run team sessions and record all the data to test with your team. Okay, so we have 2 sessions here, and now we want to check if everything is up and running. We will use this token here. Can copy it to the clipboard. Enter it here in the token field. The server URL is correct, so we want to connect here. And yes, we are connected to the team test and can choose between the different sessions. So we now have a complete empty race session before us. And now let's work with the strategy. The system has found a current race strategy, which has been set by the strategy workbench as the strategy for the next race. So it thinks it might be a good idea to preload this. Okay, so we have a strategy now. If this is not the strategy for the session we want to run, we can choose a different one. You have seen that this recently. You can load a strategy and so on, but we will use this one. And the first thing we want to do, we want to create a stint plan for that. Load from strategy. Okay, we have 6 stints. And now we can choose the drivers for the different stints. And so on. We can set the date where the session will take place. Okay, will be on Saturday. It will start at 15 o'clock. Take a look here at the session timing. So it will adopt the estimated time of the stints to the start of the session, and if the session is postponed, you can simply, for example, click 1 hour and so on. Okay, the next thing we want to do is to select the team, and Hayo is the starting driver. Great. That's it for setting up the race center. Release the plan, and the session is fine to be started. But the next thing you have to be really careful with is that every team member has set up to be part of this session before he or she enters ACC and before he or she starts the simulator controller software. To do this, everybody has the race settings app. The race settings app has also a team tab. And what you can do here is to create a default for the next session. Here in this case, we will connect to Vivid Global Racing, to the test day session as the driver Oliver Uvik. Okay, a couple of words about the driver name. Unfortunately, I cannot get my hands on the Steam ID, for example, for all the drivers connected to a given simulator. The only thing to differentiate between the drivers is the driver name. So be careful when you enter the driver names here that these names are absolute identical to the names which appear in your running session. And I myself use two different driver names. Sometimes I use my synonym, the big O, and sometimes I use my clear name according to the rules of a race. So be careful that you have set the name which appear in the session, which is part of the entry list in ACC, to be precise. In R-Factor, it's a little bit different. Only the forename and the surname is used, not the nickname. The nickname is only here for your personal fun. Okay. So if you're running the race settings for the first time, these fields will be empty. You will have been given by your team manager the server URL to connect to and the token. You enter these and click on the key. And now all the fields here will be filled, and you can select between different drivers and different sessions for this upcoming race. These are the drivers here from the Vivid account. We will use this later on in the demo. Okay, when you now save the settings, this is the session which your simulator controller software will connect to when you tell him or tell it to connect to a team session. This is the second thing to do. I now close it by pressing OK. The second thing is you have to decide how to activate a team session. You can do this with a button on your steering wheel, with a button on a button box, or you can create a hotkey on your keyboard to do this. We have seen this in the coaching session for setup and configuration, but only for now. Let's take a short look. It will end up, where is it? As a configuration parameter here, for example, for the race engineer, which is responsible for all the other assistants. The team server is per default off and is activated by the two-way toggle number 3, which is one of my switches on one of my button boxes. We will see this shortly. And that the team server is per default off, it's a very good idea, because otherwise, whenever you enter your simulator, it will try to connect to your team server, which might happen to that you end up overwriting valuable data from your last 24-hour race. It's not a good idea. So create a switch or a hotkey to enable the team server and configure it in your simulator configuration or in your simulator setup application. Okay, that's it for the administration and configuration of teams. So, any questions before we go on and do a live demo?
Hi, Oliver. Not really a question, but maybe you can spend some words on how to setting up the server URL if that's not clear for someone.
Ah,
Because I think you have written here HTTPS, and that's, I think, not the standard and default value, right?
at least for localhost, yes, and also for Azure. But I know when you're running your own server on, for example, your network attached storage, which is also visible to the outside world through your router, this can be kind of hassle to do. We have an entry in the frequently asked question section. It is by you, Thomas, as far as I know. As I
Yeah, it was me that I was. That's why I was
yeah.
mentioning it. And maybe we should spend some time in yeah, changing this information here a bit, because I have reset up my computer from scratch, and I had difficulties finding my own information and recapping everything. I had difficulties to setting up this HTTPS variant myself the second time. So maybe we should spend some time into giving some more details on the information here
Yeah, to
to
be
help people not setting up their own
yeah,
HTTPS.
yeah. To be honest, I don't know more about this topic than we found out with your installation, and this is which I have written down in the FAQ section, because I am running everything on Azure, and deploying on Azure is more or less automatic from Visual Studio, and I don't have to set up the configuration for the endpoint and for the certificate by my own. But you will
I
find
see.
this information here and also in the wiki of Simulator Controller. But maybe you want to share some knowledge here, Thomas.
Yeah, I can do so. I will just try to prepare some more detailed manual and send it over to you.
Oh, great. So I will incorporate it into the wiki and also here in the FAQ section.
Yeah,
Great, great. Very thankful. Thank you very much.
you're welcome.
Okay. So, any other question? If not, then we will
So
have.
maybe I have still
Yes?
one question. When you showed us the race center before, you were talking about tire pressures and how to set them up properly, automatic, and all this stuff.
Yeah.
I think you guys almost only drive ACC, right? Does anyone have already tried it with iRacing as well? Because this is the major simulation I
Yeah.
personally use with my team.
I'm running iRacing too, and unfortunately, iRacing does not give you tire pressure information during an active stint. You will only get it
After
afterwards
the pit stop, right?
in the pit.
Yeah.
So all this functionality, not only in the race center but also for the race engineer, is not available for iRacing.
Okay.
There
Yeah.
are other drawbacks in other simulators. Not every simulator is equal. ACC is more or less the most capable of all of them regarding telemetry information. But iRacing is some kind of old-fashioned, to be honest.
Yeah, I actually thought more in the direction of whether you have experience by changing even tire pressures in our racing at all. Because normally, whenever you buy a setup from someone or you do your setups on your own, almost every setup has set all the tire pressures at the absolute minimum in our racing. So it seems that the tire pressures in our racing are not really relevant at all. So, or at
Maybe,
least
maybe.
a lot less relevant than in other simulations as ACC.
Yeah.
I just wondered whether everyone or anyone has already had some experience with using this tool in our racing and whether this gives some advantages or not.
No, can't help you with that.
Okay,
No,
thanks.
sorry, me neither.
Okay, bye bye. So then I will prepare everything for the live demo now. First, restart the race center so it connects to the session which is configured in my race settings. So I have a short session with 2 stints prepared. We want to load a strategy, a long race, but I don't create the additional stints. We will only run 1 stint. Now I will start ACC.
In the meantime, when you during your preparation, does this kind of demo or test plan, strategy, whatever this is, also work in practice sessions, as long as the practice session is maybe set up as a team session?
Yes, it will, but you will have to enable pit stop automation during practice, because it is disabled by default. The complete pit stop support is only available in race sessions, but there is a setting in the session database where you can enable support for practice and qualifying sessions as well.
I see. Yeah.
Okay, so unfortunately, you will not see the image of ACC, but it will be recorded in the stream as an overlay, not in the stream, in the video. I will put online later on. So for you, you are part of the coaching session. You will not have any insights here, but you will see what is happening here. Okay, so ACC is already running. I will start the session. Okay, and I start simulator controller software. And as you can see here, I have 2 button boxes with lots of commands, and one is here the switch to enable this team session. I will do this now, so it is green. So my assistants now know that they are talking to a backend. We are running a team race. So let's load the setup. And start the race.
Stay double file.
So now I'm running the race. The assistants, as you probably know, will become active after the end of the first lap, at least the engineer and the strategist. The spotter will come to life at the time the race is started. But you will see data in the race center at the end of the first lap for the first time. So I will have to run 1 lap now.
Behind on the left. Car left. Left clear. Car on the right behind you. Car on the left. Still there. 3 wide, be careful. Clear on the left.
Trying to survive
Right is clear.
the first turns.
Car behind you.
The ACC AI is running at 100% all the time for my training, so they are quite good.
Behind on the left.
For you on the Discord, I'm running a session in Kialami.
Car behind you.
Half a lap already finished.
Car on the left behind you. Attention left. Left is clear. Behind on the left. Attention behind. Car behind you. Car behind you.
Approaching start finish line now.
Car at the rear.
And now when we cross the start finish line, the engineer and the strategist will come to life and they will share all their data with the team server backend, and in a few moments you will see the first data appearing in the team server, in the race center, sorry. There is the first lap, the current standings. And I now have to finish another lap because the services of the AI assistants are available after a few laps because they need to learn your telemetry data and other stuff before they can recommend anything like tire pressures or
Car on the left behind you.
full dive bump.
Attention left. Looks like the body and the aerodynamic were damaged. Left is clear. I will look at car on the left behind you.
So when we cross the start finish line for the second time, a few moments later, I will plan a pit stop. Because let's assume we had a crash.
Be careful.
Need to come in for some repairs.
Attention behind.
Well done, mate. That's all the best.
Attention input sector. Yellow flag.
So when data arrives, I will go to pause here and pause the game.
Yellow flag is cleared. Great start. Well done. 2 positions gained.
Okay, pause the game. And now we can take a look here at the data. First, here you have the positions, lap times, and so on and so on. But now we want to plan a pit stop. The first is take a look at the stint plan. Okay, Peter Kyle will be the next. But let's see what the race center will propose. Initialize from session. Okay, it proposed this because the plan says we want to do a refuel of 34 liters. We can increase this. These are values which has been copied normally from the strategy. So if we redo this, you will see it will use the refuel amount from the strategy. The pressures has been derived, as I've shown before, from the current cold pressures of the recent lap. These are these. I do not have any reference setups here in this test session, so but you have seen before how this works to adopt pressures for different drivers. Okay, and now we can send this. Now let's select aerodynamics repair and a lap 4. We can set this to the engineer. And I will continue my race.
Attention input sector. Yellow flag. 2 positions gained. Attention input sector. Yellow flag is cleared. Great start. Well done. 2 positions gained. Attention input sector. Yellow flag is cleared. Great start. Well done. 2 positions gained. Attention input sector. Yellow flag is cleared. Great start. Well done. 2 positions gained. Attention input sector. Yellow flag is cleared. Great start. Well done. 2 positions gained. Attention input sector. Yellow flag is cleared. Great start. Well done. 2 positions gained. Attention input sector. Yellow flag is cleared. Great start. Well done. 2 positions gained. Attention input sector. Yellow flag is cleared. Great start. Well done. 2 positions gained. Attention input sector. Yellow flag is cleared. Great start. Well done. 2 positions gained. on the right behind you. Oliver, we have the following for pit stop number 1. Attention behind now.
The race engineer
Dry tires. We have some changes for the
just
pressures.
showed up
27.2
and
psi in the front
tells
left tire.
me
27.1 psi
what
in
he
the front
plans
right
for
tire.
the pit stop.
27.0
So
psi in the rear left
the
tire.
driver currently
27.0
driving
psi rear right.
will
We
get
repair
some
the
feedback
aerodynamic.
that the pit stop
Okay,
has been
the
planned
crew will be ready
remote,
for you in lap 4.
and he will be given the information of the planned tire pressures, very similar to the reaction of the race engineer when you're running a single user race. So we set lap 4 as the time
Car on the
or
right
the lap
behind you.
where you want to come to the pit.
Attention behind.
And when we now cross the start-finish line, we are now currently in lap 3, and we now cross the start-finish line. The race engineer will open up
Attention
the
left.
pit stop MFD
Car left.
and will enter all the
Left
data.
is clear.
So now we are in lap 4.
Car at the rear.
And
We are almost ready. Attention left. Clear
pit
on the
stop
left.
MFD is open.
Behind on the left. Behind on the left.
The algorithm learns the current structure of the MFD because sections may be hidden, the changed tires might be not selected, and after a few moments all the
Car
data
at the rear. Car at the rear.
we planned are entered into the MFD.
Car left. Left
And
is
now
clear.
I crashed.
Car behind you. Clear on the right. Left is clear. Behind on the left. Yellow flag in second sector. Green flag.
So, driver has been selected, Peter is the
Car
next,
behind you will attack you now. Stay focused.
and
Maybe we need
the
some
last
repairs.
thing
Let me collect some
I have
data.
to do is now come to the pit, and everything is fine. Meanwhile, you are seeing in the race center display that the values are updated live. We have a very uninteresting report currently selected, the lap times report, but all other reports are also updated live while you are in the session. Now I'm entering the pits.
Hold the brakes, check ignition and prepare for restart.
Perfect stop. Crew is working. And when we now head out again with a different driver, you will see that the pit stop data will be entered here in the pit stops list.
Come on, let's go.
So that you have a history of all recent pit stops and the values you have chosen there. And there you go. Okay, I quit ACC. And this Disable the overlay.
Done. It was great working with you again.
And now we can take a look here at the values of the last pit stop. Not so interesting if you're running a single user race as I've done now against the AI, but if you are running on a real ACC server, you will get the, as I've shown before, the tire data for the recent tires and so on. So, okay, the last thing I want to show you is how to work with the strategy after you have had to come in for an unplanned pit stop. Load strategy. This was the original strategy. So now we are in lab 5 or so nothing is correct anymore. And one thing we can do now here is adjust the strategy to the current race situation. He's running a new simulation and will come up with a completely new strategy. As you can see, we are in lap 5. We have a tire life of 40 laps left because we just started with fresh tires out of the pit stop. We have 97 liters of fuel left, and so we have a shifted set of planned pit stops from these adjusted strategy, and we can even now go here and update this pit stop plan from this new strategy. Okay, the plan has less stints than the strategy. Okay, fine. And now he will update the estimated times, which might be quite important if you're, for example, running a 24-hour race during the night and want to let your teammates know when they have to get up and come to their rig to run their stints at 2 o'clock in the morning. As I said before, you can also run a strategy simulation using the Monte Carlo scenario. I will not do this in the moment because the current race situation after 4 laps is not has not enough data to predict the driver errors for the next laps and so on. But maybe you will find some time when you are running a team race using the software to do this. It's quite interesting with what the software comes up sometimes. Okay, so I think I have told you everything. Any questions remaining?
One question maybe. I think I have read somewhere that you recommend not running a local team server on the same computer, running also the simulation actually, right? Because there is lots of data to be worked on.
That's right, depending on your hardware. If you're running ACC plus the assistants, which are using a rule engine with a big knowledge base, so are using quite a lot of memory, and the race center, which collects all the data of let's say a 24-hour race, you might get into trouble when you have a system with only 16 gigabytes of RAM. I have run a 12-hour race. I only have 16 gigabytes of RAM in my system, and I have run a 12-hour race without any problems, but the system end up using, let me say, around 13 or 14 gigabytes at the end of the race. So if you want,
is it mainly the race center or the team server? Because the race center, I think, needs to be run by every team member.
The race center, yes, but you can quit it when your stint starts and restart it after your stint. so no problem there.
32 gigs, and I think all my team members do have a similar amount of RAM.
Okay, no problem.
So
With 32 gigs, you're fine. The team server itself, it can take quite a lot of bandwidth to communicate with all the assistants and race centers which are currently active. So if you're running on a machine which also runs ACC, it might interfere with the bandwidth requirements, but I don't know. So to be safe, run it anywhere else.
okay, but it's not, let's say, CPU bound mainly,
No,
or it's memory, right?
It's not also not memory. The bandwidth is the topic. The CPU requirements and the memory requirements of the team server backend are quite small, really small.
Since I'm driving mainly in VR, I need all my computing power to drive my virtual reality headset anyway. But I don't have any concerns about memory and internet bandwidth. So I might end up running all the simulator controller software, including the team server on my simulation PC. Because it's
okay.
I just need the CPU and graphics card power to drive my simulation, right?
Yeah.
So memory should not be that kind of a big deal, and also internet connectivity or bandwidth.
Okay.
I think I have a
then
100
you will
megabit connection, so no issue on that.
Then you will have no problem. The CPU requirements of all the software is around 8% on my system of the overall CPU availability. When I run all the assistants, the team server backend, and the race center locally. So it's okay.
That's not an issue then at all.
Yeah.
Since our racing only utilizes 2 CPU cores anyway, so modern CPUs have much more than 2, of course.
Yeah.
That should not be an issue then.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions?
Yes, well, it might be a repeat of what I asked in the Discord. But obviously, when you're running a solo race, you're not going to use the mouse to operate the race center while driving.
Correct.
So could you say a little bit about the voice commands needed to do the actions you showed?
Yes. The race center is a late addition to the software. The software started with the button box and Stream Deck controller support and continued with the race assistants, which are capable of voice interaction with you as a driver, but can also be controlled by buttons on a button box. So everything we have seen here in the race center can also be done in a single user race with a direct interaction with the race assistants. For example, you are running a race against the AI, and you want to come into the pit. You activate the race engineer by issuing the activation phrase with the push to talk button. For example, hey Jonah. Jonah will come alive. Yes, I hear you. What can I do for you? And then you ask, can you plan a pit stop? Jonah will come back with a pit stop plan, which is similar to the plan we created manually, but all the values will be derived by the AI. So Jonah will look at your current fuel consumption and the remaining race time and will calculate the required amount of fuel. Jonah will check any damage and will propose some repairs. It will check the required tire pressures, and it will also take into account any temperature changes in the environment. For example, if the temperature drops, the AI might come up with a pressure recommendation which is a little bit too high at the beginning of the stint and a little bit too low at the end of the stint, but quite well in the middle. And so on. Once,
sorry, just one question to that.
Yeah.
When you're asked to plan a pit stop, what lap will the engineer use then? What lap will it plan it for?
It will it will calculate the refuel requirements according to the remaining race time. The lap you come in can you decide on your own?
Okay, yeah. So it calculates towards the total amount of fuel needed to complete the race.
Yes, but if
Okay.
you need more fuel to complete the race, which is your car capable to hold, yes, you will have a second pit stop planned later on.
Yeah. Okay.
The answer to the other part of your question you not ask is, yes, you can ask the strategist what will be the best lap to come in for a pit stop. The strategist has a different focus. It will take a look at your opponents, the current traffic in your surroundings, and might propose a lap to come in where you end up getting back to the track with the least amount of traffic around you. So if you want to get a recommendation for a good lap to come in, ask the strategist. And it will answer, okay, lap 27 will be good for a pit stop. Should I instruct your engineer? And
So
then
what is the question you asked then for
uh,
that best lap?
maybe we can take a look here. You will have all the commands here, and
Mhm.
we will take a look at the Kato commands, pit stop planning. What is the best lap for the next pit stop?
Okay.
So, and to complete that, once you are satisfied with the plan for the upcoming pit stop, yes, you can change the plan in direct interaction with the engineer. Okay, I will go back here to the command list. For example, once the engineer has created the plan, but you want to increase the tire pressure, you can change the plan by issuing several commands. For example, can we increase front left by 0.2? Just one example.
Mhm.
Once you are satisfied with the plan, you can ask the engineer, can you prepare the pit stop? Prepare means the same what we have seen before in the race center demo. The pit stop MFD will open up and all the data will be entered into the dialog. And then you're fine and can come to the pit.
Okay.
Okay. Other questions? Seems not.
Oliver,
Yes?
it would be nice when we two make it together for Saturday, maybe.
Okay, yes, no problem. Okay. So, then I thank you. I will end the recording now.